Right, welcome everybody. It's really lovely to have people watching us from all around the world. It makes World Childless Week feel like that is such a big, wonderful thing. So thank you all for coming. My name's Meriel. I'll introduce myself a bit more in a moment, but I'm just going to say that you are here today to listen to and hopefully contribute, if you'd like to our webinar on what helps and what stops or hinders recovery from childlessness. And I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to invite Catherine-Emmanuelle and Karin to introduce themselves. And we will then get going on the webinar. So my name's Meriel Whale. I'm from Sussex in the UK, although I grew up in Birmingham. And I'm childless because conception, including through IVF, would have been extremely unlikely to have worked due to my health issues and because I was turned down for adoption. So I now work as a counsellor for individuals and couples, focusing on working with other childless people, with neurodivergent people, and with the LGBTQIA community, as I fit into all of these groups. So that's a little bit about why I'm here today and why I'm doing this webinar. And I live with my partner and 2 cats in Lewes in Sussex in the UK. So I've got Karin first on my screen. So Karin, I'd like to invite you to introduce yourself.
I will. Thank you so much, Meriel, and a big warm welcome to not only us here as panelists, Catherine-Emmanuelle and Meriel, of course. So welcome to us. And of course, thank you, Stephanie, for introducing us and for putting this incredible week together once again for so many of us. Our numbers are growing every year, so it's wonderful. And of course, to our audience, a warm welcome to you too. My name is Karin Enfield de Vries. I am based in the north of Belgium. I'm from Holland. And I live together with my English husband and our cat. Like I said, in the north of Belgium. Really pleased to be here. I'm 45 years old, and I've been on my childless journey for 12 years. I am childless due to the consequences of cervical cancer at the age of 33. And ever since then, I've been kind of navigating my way through life as a childless woman and everything that comes with that. A proud World Childless Week ambassador. So in that capacity, I'm also here today. Yeah, I'm just really, really chuffed to be here on this Sunday morning for me. It's well, actually, it's noon, 12 o'clock midday here for me. So yeah, really pleased to be here, and thank you for having me.
Great, thanks so much, Karin. It's lovely to have you here and to be in this space together talking about our experiences. And now I'd like to invite Catherine-Emmanuelle to introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Catherine-Emmanuelle de Lille. I'm from Quebec, Canada, and I'm the creator of Femmes Sans Enfants. I'm single, and I live with my 3 cats, and of course, childless. And what led me to be childless is that I discovered at the age of 14, I was experiencing early menopause. So it was a very long process for me to accept my childlessness. And now I'm very happy to be part of this wonderful community which still helps me go through all the feelings and certainly get connection with women that get it. So
thanks very much. So it's really lovely, as I said, to be here today and to share this with you. And what we're going to do first is we're going to talk about the 3 most difficult things in our recovery from childlessness, the things that have hindered us the most in recovering. We will go on to talk about what's helped us recover. We're not just going to focus on the things that have been tough, although I do think it's really important for us to have a space to share those things, to share the things that have been difficult as well as the things that have supported and helped us. We'd really like to invite all of you who are watching to share your own experiences in the chat of what's helped you recover from childlessness, what's hindered you to recover in your recovery from childlessness, and where you feel you are on your recovery journey, because you could be anywhere. It's a long journey. You could be right at the beginning. You could be, halfway through. You could have taken 1 step. You could have taken 1,000 steps. And we're here we're here and we welcome all of you with all your experiences. So do feel free to pop things in the chat, but only if you'd be happy if we read them out. I'm not going to read everything out, but we might read a couple of things out. We won't mention your name. We'll just read out what you've written. So please do only share if you're happy for it to be written out without your name. But you might also find that even if you don't want to write in the chat some of the things that helped and hindered you, you might want to write them down for yourself. That could be a supportive thing for you to do. But I'm going to start by talking a bit about the things that have made it harder for me to recover from being childlessness. I think one of the things that I found hardest is isolation. And this was before I became a part of childless communities. And there was a long period of time when I wasn't in contact with other childless people, and I felt completely on my own. I felt that everybody around me, so my cat's just put her foot on my leg, so I'm just detaching the cat. I think she wants to be part of the webinar. Yeah, feeling like I was in the minority, like everybody around me was becoming a parent, and I felt completely alone. And there was nobody who understood me. There was nobody who was like me. It really made me start to question what I was experiencing, and to feel as if I was wrong for feeling what I felt, because there was nobody around me to provide me with a mirror or any kind of recognition of what I was going through. So that's one of the things that I found absolutely the hardest. Another thing that I found really tough was there was an expectation, whether there was an expectation from me or an expectation from the people around me, to attend events that were really hard without being given a choice. So expected to attend christenings and be really happy at them, or at least appear really happy at them, expected to go and support people at their birthday parties, expected to visit people when they just had a baby, and to join in with the overarching experience and atmosphere of celebration, when on the inside I was both wanting to celebrate for my friends but feeling completely isolated and alone. So not being given the choice either by myself or by other people whether I went to these events or not. And I think the other thing that I found incredibly difficult was being silenced when I did try and talk, whether it was through people being embarrassed or not understanding or all sorts of reasons, but trying to say something and having my experiences ignored and not inquired about. I think these were the things I found the hardest. And I'd just like to, again, I'm going to throw this open to Karin and Catherine-Emmanuelle to share the things that have really made life hard for them. And I'll start with Catherine-Emmanuelle, if that's okay.
Yes, it is. Actually, my first thing that made my childlessness so hard to accept for me too was isolation. So same as you, I felt so alone, and that's why I decided to turn to the web when I did, because I was yearning for a connection and for someone to really deeply understand me, and for sure give me compassion and listening. And then the other thing that didn't help me was the amount of comparison I was doing. I was comparing myself a lot to mothers. And that was really, really, it was a defense mechanism. I know now, but that really didn't help me, because in doing comparison, actually, while you're doing that, you can't really see what is your value as a woman, and you devaluate yourself all the time. And when you start to see it, when I started to see that I was doing that, that was very helpful for me to kind of stop the wheel from turning and trying to work on building self-worth. And the third thing that was not helpful for me was my environment, because I'm an elementary school teacher. And that made it particularly hard for me to grieve, because I was surrounded by mothers all the time and just swamped by their stories, and couldn't get the courage to talk about mine or even share what I would do on a daily basis, because I felt so low and invisible. So I think the environment in which I was growing and I was working was really, really, really challenging and slowing my process. So it took me extra courage, I see it now, to go through this grieving process in that setting. So that was very, yeah, the three things that were really challenging for me.
Thank you so much, Catherine-Emmanuelle. And I think there's a lot of recognition in the chat of some of the things that we're saying. So thanks everybody for the things that you're putting in. That's absolutely brilliant. And yes, so Karin, over to you about the things that have made it harder for you to heal or recover.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say I just love what's coming in the chat, because it's so recognizable. I can relate to everything that both you have said and what you have shared here already, but also what people are sharing in the chat. It's just, yeah, I'm sorry, I was just reading through that, and it's like, oh gosh. And I remember how I felt when I was experiencing those things that were really hindering me, and also not even recognizing that it was actually hindering me. And I think that was also one of the biggest learnings for me, that not even recognizing. For me, the three main things that hindered me was an complete and utter lack of self-care, that I just became almost like indifferent of wanting and needing to care for myself. Because like, I don't matter anymore anyway, so what does it matter then that if I look that I keep looking after myself? It almost, I felt, maybe, I don't know, but it felt like I was cancelled as a woman, and it's with not being able to fit fit the mold anymore. I was 33. I'd lost my reproductive organs. I was never going to be a mum. In the biological sense, any other options that doctors told us that would potentially be an option for us turned out not to be an option. So I had nowhere to go, and just, all the pockets of hope that I was holding on to just kind of evaporated one by one, and I just gave up. Self-care became a thing that I just completely stopped doing. The second thing that was really hindering me was that I became convinced that I was the poster girl for all the stigmas around childlessness. So anything that society had to say about childless women, I bought into it. So I was convinced that I was the career woman, or that I was the crazy cat lady. Even more, it's come back into the news again earlier this year, and I just felt that, and again that also fed into my lack of self-care, but I became convinced that I had to kind of buy into those. And the third one that really hindered me was going into overdrive. So I felt that I had to go into survival mode, because of what happened to me, and because of my parental state, or my non-parental state, I should say. And I just went into overdrive. So I just focused on becoming focusing on my job, traveling around the world, not being at home, not spending time with my loved ones. I think, Meriel, you mentioned it, the isolation, but I was really putting myself also in that isolation. I felt undeserving of those connections, of claiming space for me in society, within my family, within my circle of friends. I just went like, well, fine, if I just focus on not having to deal with anything, I just go into overdrive, then I can just keep running away from that. So I think those were the three elements that hindered me the most in my early journey.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Karin. And like I say, there's a lot of recognition coming into the chat.
Oh God, I just see in the chat. Woo.
Yeah, no, I know. That's what I'm saying. There's a lot of recognition coming in.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to read out some of the comments from the chat. Again, I'm not going to say anybody's names. I'm just inviting people to comment on what's helped them and what's hindered them. So I'm just going to read a few of those out before we carry on, because we really want this to be a participatory experience where we hear your voices as well, where we really say that all voices are valid and all experiences are valid, and that's really important. So yeah, just going to read a few things out. So someone said, not just a lack of recognition, but a lot of times outright denial whenever I tried to talk about it. And I feel a surge of feeling when I read that out. I can feel my voice starting to go wobbly when I read that. So here's someone talking about what's helped them. So they're really grateful to have had their story out in the world. They shared it in the 2021 World Childless Week. In 2022 and 2023, this person had 9 operations, almost died. so often. And now in 2024, writing again, being with you all again, and so thankful to Steph and this community who've really helped with my recovery regarding my childlessness. And we've heard a comment about denial and how painful that is, and now a comment about being seen and having community and how supportive that is. And I think we're really beginning to get to some of the truth of our experiences. Somebody else talking about being silenced. I remember very early on in my CNBC realization, trying to talk to a friend who I thought was a really close friend. We'd confided so much in each other before, and she completely stonewalled me. Again, I can feel a surge of emotion when I read this. Wouldn't speak about it with me, and told me other friends with no children just got on with it. At the time, it utterly broke me. Yeah. And so I'm really hearing that brokenness. Somebody else has said, before joining the other club, the lack of support from my friends, being shut down when I tried to talk to them initially about my IVF as a single woman, and then how I felt when I fell off the IVF roller coaster in 2019 as a completely broken woman. I felt so lost and as though I'd fallen into a deep, dark abyss. I think there's something about being broken that we really recognise. And I think, my question for all of us is, what can help us heal from this brokenness? And I think, again, one of the things that we're hearing is a focus on community. And Steph has said back to somebody, which is lovely, Stephanie Joy Phillips, our founder and our heroine. Steph has said, you've faced numerous tough situations, but are still here and growing stronger every day. I'm glad you found World Childless Week and the wonderful, loving community with the support and love it offers. So if there's anything that can help us with our brokenness, I think community is one of those things.
Meriel, I don't know if you saw this message from Nina, which is interesting. She says she had to put her grief on hold because of having to care for her parents' health issues. That is quite something.
Yeah, that's huge. Having to postpone healing for having to focus on other people. Yeah. So that's a really important thing that happens for people. We might not be in the sandwich generation where we're caring for our own children and also caring for our aging parents, but we're still having to put things on hold to care for parents' health issues. So I think there's pulling out a really important hindrance there is needing to care for others, because childless people do care for others. It's not just children that can be cared for. We still have caring responsibilities. Having to care for others can put our own process on hold. And I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge. And here's somebody else saying something which I think is really important to include in our story, which is that somebody's saying they haven't been able to speak up about childlessness because they've not had IVF or medical reasons for not having children. Their journey has been through not finding a suitable partner, and maybe feeling that aspect of being childlessness isn't seen and isn't valued or affirmed as much as other ways of being childless. But I think one of the things we all acknowledge in World Childless Week is there is no right or wrong way to be childless. There's no worse way or better way to be childless.
Not a competition.
It's not yet. We've all come on different routes. And yet we've all found ourselves in this same place, and hopefully we can all be in this field of experiencing and meet each other here. So I'm really grateful to you for sharing that. It's lovely to hear that there are so many different routes that we've all taken. Someone's saying that they can relate to this feeling of not feeling like they're fully grown up. I feel immature due to the lack of being a mother, not having all these experiences that they have. And someone else saying that they went through early menopause as well at a time when my friends were all having children. The many years of gaslighting by the doctors I went to continue to isolate and shut me down. And my friends had no interest either. They couldn't relate, but I was expected to relate to them. And that's something that I really relate to, that sense that people don't often make the effort to relate to us, but we're expected to relate to them and support them. And often that doesn't come in our direction. It all goes from us to our friends. I think that's a really important part. Karin and Catherine-Emmanuelle, do you think I've missed any important comments? Please do. Anything that I should have read out. I wish I could read them all. But
No, I think you're pretty on top of that. So thank you for that, Meriel. And I just want to respond to two of the comments that you just read out as well. Is that as someone the person who commented on not feeling like a fully grown up, not feeling fully grown up, because you don't have the experience of being a mother. And I read it, and then you read it out. So first reading it and then listening to you saying it out loud, Meriel, it really touched me in the sense that I've had to deal with that myself as well. That I felt, and maybe not so much of a fully as a grown up, but just not part of what was expected of me in my late 30s and now in my mid 40s. That that people were kind of, am I able to join in the conversation, to give my 2 cents about upbringing, or about my moral compass or my values of what I would have liked to pass on to my children, or what I would like to or what type of behavior that I expect from children. I'm a proud aunt. I'm lucky to have friends in my life who are allowing me to also be part of their children's lives, and even come to me for advice also on their upbringing and stuff like that, or at least have conversations with me about it. It took a while to get there, but yeah, so that sense of not belonging or not being part of, or not feeling fully grown up. Excuse me. Also through my work that I do, supporting people who are childless, not by choice, and we're all in that space. The 3 of us here, is that I see this so often, okay? And I think it stems back also to what has hindered all 3 of us again as well. Is that it not acknowledging or not allowing yourself to actually say, hey, but I still have worth. I still have a place to claim. I can still be part of something bigger that doesn't have to be connected to whether I am a mother or a father or a parent or a caretaker or not. And that it's just something it touched me. So I just wanted to comment on that in more detail. So thanks for that.
Thank you. And thanks everybody who's commented. There's a real sense of warmth and recognition in the chat, and there are people reaching out to each other and offering to share emails, which I'm really heartened by, because I think one of the things that we're coming back to is this idea of community and how important community is. And I think we're going to move on now to think about the things that have helped us in our recovery from childlessness. And actually the first thing I want to talk about that's helped me probably the most is community, is being able to be with other childless people. I suddenly felt normal again after having felt so abnormal for so long, feeling that everybody could see that I didn't deserve to be a mother, and that was somehow visible on my face, and everyone was going to be judging me about it. I suddenly felt like, oh my God, maybe I'm normal after all, and maybe I'm not alone after all. And that was because of meeting other people who were childless and hearing other people say, this is my story, and sharing their story. And I recognized things in their story, and I didn't feel so alone. I mean, I think it's quite unusual to be turned down for adoption. I don't get to meet many people who are, but I have met friends in the childless community who I've been on courses with, and I've said it, and they come to me in the break and said, I was turned down for adoption as well. And I never talk about it because it feels like there's a lot of shame. So community's made a huge difference to me. That's one of the biggest things. And then I think one of the things that's helped as me as well is when my friends with children do recognize that some things are hard.
Yeah.
And don't expect me to come, and do give me the choice about saying, a friend said to me once, I think my child's birthday party is going to be really boring for you. I'm not really looking forward to it, but I have to do it. Please don't feel you have to come. That was really helpful. So yeah, that recognition and being given a choice about whether to go to things or not feeling the pressure, and just having friends say to me, I still want to listen to you. I still know this is hard for you. I really want to listen. I really want to check in with you. Just having people gently inquire about my experience and let me know I've got permission to share it with them has been really, really helpful. So I'm going to again invite Catherine-Emmanuelle and then Karin to talk about what's helped them the most in their journey through childlessness. So yeah, Catherine-Emmanuelle, over to you.
Yeah. Actually, what was the most helpful for me is sharing my story. So I found my own way to share it, which was through a blog. But I just want to remind everybody that there's not one way to express and share. You could do it through art, writing, so photography, whatever. But that was very transformative for me to be able to share it and say it again and again and again and again, and seeing my story and my narrative transform. So that was really, really helpful. And then the other thing that was very helpful for me is to build a circle full of childless women.
Mm.
Meaning by having friends, creating real deep connections and friendships, that was very transformative for me. Not that I don't have any friends that are mothers, but my circle is so important for me. Circle of women who really, really get it from the inside. And it could be childless or child-free, but that circle has grown. And I created that.
Mm.
So I started to recognize myself. Yeah, I see you're touched, Karen.
Mm.
Yeah. And this is kind of a gift that I gave to myself. And this sounds like a power you can have on your life, is bringing the people you want in your life to create this circle of love and compassion with women that get you.
Yeah.
So, and it takes time, and I know it's not easy for everybody to do that, to create new friendships, even especially when we're getting older. But still, it was, and it's still so helpful for me. Mm.
Thanks so much, Catherine-Emmanuelle. And again, I get a real sense that we're all here together today, having this conversation and having this experience. But yeah, I'll just now invite Karin to talk about the things that have helped you the most.
Yeah, just Catherine-Emmanuelle, honestly, what you just shared, it really touched me, and it made me think indeed also of, because one of the things that helped me as well is that connection, finding support, finding, I've named it finding my tribe. For those of you who know me, I was affiliated with Gateway Women for a long time. I hosted programs and stuff, and I was part of the community for a long time as community manager and stuff. So but I joined that community as a childless woman needing help and also wanting support because I felt so lost. So I remember the first time that and I think it's what a lot of people might recognize, 3 o'clock in the morning, I was into my, let me just be honest, second bottle of wine, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was just Googling childlessness and how do I live a life without children, and not knowing where to go, where to turn for support. Again, Bella, I said earlier, completely in overdrive, buying into the narrative that I had no worth, blah, blah, blah. So I looked for help and I found support, and just I remember posting my first message about, hey, I'm Karin, I'm childless, and I don't know how to deal with it. And just the warmth that poured in, and the love, and the people like, oh my God, I hear you, I understand you, you're not alone. And all the responses that came in after that, and how that grew eventually into what I ended up doing in the community, and also now through my work, it's been so instrumental in my healing journey to have people around me who get it. And what I also learned is that, as with in any community, any social interactions you're part of, not everybody will become your friend. Even within the childless community, not everybody will be your new bestie, or will be the person that you build strong relationships with. But even if you can allow yourself just to feel the support and be held by what that community represents, that already is so powerful. And then you will find those connections with people who you share a little bit more than just your childless story with. You find people who actually you connect with on a different level. I found travel buddies. I found a group of women that I've met up with. I've traveled all over the world by now to meet people in person, and it's so powerful to be able to do that and to really make those connections and form bonds and form friendships. So that was huge for me. And the second thing, well, maybe even now, I think it's not a ranking, I think, but the second thing that was really helpful for me as well was to acknowledge that I needed to grieve what I'd lost. And that I needed to grieve not just the fact that I had cancer and that I no longer had my reproductive organs. That was a big loss I had to grieve, but also the loss of hope of the future, loss of my dreams of motherhood, loss of my position in society. I talked about it earlier. The loss of not being able to bond with my friends over sharing pregnancies or sharing stories about mothering our children, not being able to see my parents become grandparents, or see my brother and my sister become aunties or aunt and uncles of my kids. While I'm an aunt and uncle, aunt, I should say, I'm an aunt to their kids, but I'm never going to experience what that's like for them to be on the receiving end of that. So, and the list goes on and on and on, because it's impacting us, even though I'm okay with where I am in my journey and childlessness no longer defines me as a person. Excuse me, I have a froggy in my throat. It no longer defines me as a person. However, I do know that there will come a period in my life where I have to go through another circle of dealing with loss, because I know that as I age and as I grow older, I hope to age and grow into the next phase of my life, things will change again. My siblings might become grandparents, or my friends might become grandparents. There's no guarantees. We all know that. And no guarantees of that in life at all. But I know that when that moment comes around in my life, I will have to go through another cycle of loss and navigate my way through that. And I think acknowledging that I need that all those losses deserve a grief period. And some of them are short, some of them are, kind of easier to navigate through, and others take a bit longer, and others are always with me. I carry them with me as I move forward in my journey. So that those two have really been helpful for me to have that acknowledgement, like, oh crap, okay, I'm not lost, I'm not an outsider, I don't need to isolate myself, I don't need to shy away from interactions with others. What I really need to do is my grief work. I need to look those losses in the eye, find a way to internalize them and start owning them, and also give them the love and attention that they deserve, and to really, really in return then also become even more kinder and gentler with myself. And that is something that I still have to practice consciously and apply consciously every day. Even now, I will never take it for granted. I will always have to kind of make conscious decisions that I need to work on that. And thirdly, what's been really helpful, and I think this is a nice segue also into the next kind of part of what we wanted to talk about, is counselling. Find a counsellor. When I was first had my first surgery, I was in a hospital bed, and they gave me sleeping pills, morphine. I was under a lot of medications. I should not be up walking. There I was, 4 o'clock in the morning, up with an IV drip, walking up and down the corridor in the hospital, because my body was so full of adrenaline of what had happened. I couldn't sleep, even though they gave me every medication under the sun. I should have enjoyed it, but I couldn't. So there I was, pacing up and down the hallway, and the night nurse found me and said, I think I need to get a psychologist or perhaps a therapist to come and see you in the morning. Who did they send? An 8-month pregnant woman coming in to sit by my bed and talk about, hey, how do you feel about the fact that you don't have reproductive organs anymore? Mind blown. And I've had a few other examples of counselors who didn't really get it, therapists who didn't really understand, who come up with unsolicited advice, all the bingos, we've all heard them, we're all aware of those. So I really had to do a good search on where to find a counsellor who is childless informed, who understands what I'm talking about, who steers away from giving that unsolicited advice, or have you thought of this, or blah, blah, blah. No, just sit there and meet me where I am and then let's start that journey from there. So sorry, I'm taking up a bit of time here, but those are the three key elements that really help me move forward in my journey.
I keep forgetting to unmute myself. Sorry, everybody. I keep trying to talk when I'm muted. Yes, I think we would like to reflect a little bit on counselling now, because I think for all of us, it's been both a hindrance and a help in our recovery. But we'd really like to invite all of you, as well as sharing your experiences, to talk about, in your opinion, how you think counsellors, both with and without children, can best help childless people. And I, as well as being a counsellor, have had counselling. I've had counselling because I had to as part of my training, but I've also had counselling because I've needed it. And I've needed it not just about my childlessness, but obviously about other things in my life as well, but I have needed it about my childlessness. And my experience of working as a counsellor and of being a client, and do you know what, being a counsellor doesn't help me by being a client, doesn't help me to be a client. I'm as raw and vulnerable as a client as anybody is. It's a space where I don't have to pretend, where I don't have to be professional. So it's a really helpful space for me. And I think my experience is that what I need is for counsellors to be really willing to try and understand experiences that are not their own, even if this can prove challenging, for counsellors to be really willing to be challenged, to be willing to be brave and fearless, because I think to be a counsellor does require you to be brave, actually, whether you're working with clients who have similar experiences to you or completely different experiences to you. I think we're all required to be brave, but to look bravely and fearlessly into the reality of someone else's experience, whether it's shared or not, I think that's really crucial. To really listen and put aside your own experiences as much as we can, to really hear those of another and to meet those experiences with compassion and care. In the past, and I can see some things coming in the chat about things that counsellors have said that are unhelpful. So there's somebody who's just said that a counsellor, they went to see a counsellor to try and process the grief of infertility, and the counsellor said, well, at least you've got a husband. So the counsellor completely shut that person down. I had a counsellor with children say to me once that she really understood what it was like to be me, permanently childless, because she'd had successful IVF. So the fact that she'd had to have IVF and it was successful meant that she could really understand where I was coming from. And I remember thinking, but you've got children through IVF. I don't have children, and I never even tried IVF. So how relevant that is, I don't know. So yes, counsellors are not immune to saying really helpful, unhelpful things. There are also some counsellors who say really helpful things and who can be really supportive both with and without children. I've got a counsellor now who does have a child, and has proved herself really able to put aside her own experiences of motherhood to be with my experiences of childlessness, and that's really, really helped. So again, I'd like to invite all of you, which is happening in the chat, which is fantastic, to think about the question, what can counsellors with or without children do best to help support childless people? Because I think it's something the counselling profession needs to get better at. So again, Karin and Catherine-Emmanuelle, over to you both, but also please keep sharing and we will read some out in a moment. Yeah, Catherine-Emmanuelle, would you like to go?
For me, actually, what I need from a counselor, and I thought at first when I was getting counseling, I thought I really needed to have a counselor that was childless. And then I end up being with a counselor that has children. So in a strange way, I just discovered I could have great counseling from a woman that was a mother. So what I needed was someone that was actually getting curious about the experience, that was going down the ladder and going to the bottom of this hole with me. So in a strange way, it doesn't have to do with being a mom or not. But in another way, what I can say is that I get clients that tell me, oh my God, I've never been listened like that before. So there's a feeling I get that you really, really understand what I'm going through. So I just wanted to bring up these two opposing things that are very interesting, actually. And I think in counseling, what is the most important is not try to fix and just listen. Because if you're trying to fix the client, your client, you're telling him that or her that she doesn't have the tools to help herself. So I guess it's not a good thing to try to fix and intervene and direct the process. You just need to be there with the person. If you are a mother or a non-mother, a therapist should be there just getting curious and with a lot of listening abilities for sure. Mm.
If
Yeah.
there's anything you'd like to add to what counsellors can do to really make a difference?
Yeah, I would like to, but also, Catherine, can I ask you just a question? Because what you shared, the kind of like the almost the two opposites that you were describing. Do you also have you also kind of looked into when you were looking for a counselor or a therapist yourself? Did you also have to kind of experiment with different types of counseling or different types of therapists, different forms or different different
Yes,
ways? And maybe I'm just curious, what did you find that helped you most?
Very good question, Karen. It was a humanistic approach helped me the most. So I have someone be empathic and I have a counselor that was letting herself touched but by what I was experiencing. So not only being in a position of being very rational about things, but getting down there and trying to connect emotionally with me, with my experience. So that was very helpful to find finally the type of approach that I studied because I loved it so much. And then became a counselor using a humanistic approach. So that was a game changer for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's really important to also kind of be aware of where you are in your journey, because I've learned and I've discovered that I have needed different types and different forms of therapy throughout my journey. As when I first started, I needed perhaps not so much a childless informed counselor, but a grief counselor. That to really kind of help me with, okay, what you're feeling is grief, and how do I grieve? How do I grieve without feeling that if I start to cry, it will never end? How do I connect with the grief that I'm holding in my body? Because rationally I could understand it, and I'm very well spoken. I can give words to all my emotions. So I also had an experience that a therapist once said to me, like, well, I don't know how to help you because you're already so able to put everything into words that I don't know what I can tell you that will be helpful for you. So like, oh, hold on a minute. So maybe perhaps I don't need cognitive therapy. I realized that I needed some more somatic therapy, some body work. I remember that when I found someone who just put her hands on my shoulders and just allowed me to lean back and said, I've got you. The floodgates opened and my whole body just kind of changed, and grief came from my toes basically. So at different stages in my journey, I've needed also different types and different forms of therapy, and to be able to discover that, but also to discuss that with a therapist, say, hey, I think I'm done talking. What else can we do? I remember I said that to one of my therapists, and he recommended, it was a male therapist, and he recommended, right, perhaps I can send you to a haptotherapist, which is a person who doesn't talk to you, but looks at your energy levels, and just through those kind of whole different exercises. So that for me was really important to also kind of explore and experiment with, hey, what do I need at certain moments in time to also equip myself with the all the tools that I needed, not just from a rational perspective or from a cognitive perspective, but also from a physical perspective and from an emotional perspective, that I was able to connect with my emotions and with what my body was also telling me. Going into overdrive, not looking after yourself and stuff, your body will keep score. So it's like, okay, if I want to take care of me, I also need to learn how to take care of my body that is carrying me with that. And I've just read one of the comments. I just want to touch upon that, that someone says that I had a number of battles with my counselor. Things have improved. I can now tell her if she says something that triggers me. This in return helps me to speak up when I'm with people outside of the counseling room. That is so powerful, to be able also to have built up such a relationship based on trust with your counselor, that you are able to say, hey, you know what you just said actually triggers me, and that you're being heard within the therapy room, to be that is being heard and acknowledged, but also that it helps you how to hold yourself when you're interacting with others outside of that therapy room. I just found that so powerful. And there is some more comments on what some of the unhelpful things that counselors have said. But I just, it's thank you for that. I think it's just wonderful. And I just wanted to share that. So experiment with, hey, what works for you, and don't feel that you have to stick with your therapist out of guilt or out of gratitude for what he or she has done for you so far. It's okay to say, hey, I've learned, thank you for helping me to get to this stage. I now might need something different, or I might need something more, or I want to focus on a different part of my journey. And I think that's, I would like to invite all of you to kind of really allow yourself to discover, hey, what is it that I need at this moment in time? And of course, any good counselor will also recognize that and say, hey, perhaps, it would be, perhaps we've come to the end of our collaboration, and I think you might benefit more from this or that. But not all counselors do that. But also allow yourself to discover what it is that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to come to some of the things that people have written about, which I think we can all learn a lot from. I was also very moved by what you said, Catherine-Emmanuelle, about if a counsellor tries to fix a client, that takes away from their own capacity to solve their own problems. And also it suggests that they need fixing. But as we've already said from earlier on, we're not broken. We might feel broken and we might need community to help us, but we're not actually broken. We don't need to be fixed, because there's nothing wrong with us and there's nothing wrong with what we've experienced. So that was a really interesting point. And I too like that post about what you do with the counsellor can help you in your outside life as well. Being brave in your counselling can help you challenge people outside. So some of the things that have not helped, somebody had an NHS therapist tell them that if they did Reiki or Reiki, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, and this person offered privately to get rid of masculine energy, then they would be able to get pregnant. And I think they made this person in this comments making a really good point that there is a lot of ignorance in the helping professions that really needs to be challenged. And for people to be able to say, as you said, Karen, this bit's not working for me. Honestly, I need to try something else. So somebody saying that they were lucky when childlessness came up earlier in the year, they were already with a psychotherapist. And this person, and this I think touches on an important point, this client really needed this, and the therapist was experienced in trauma therapy and was really able to offer trauma-informed therapy. And I think every counsellor working with somebody who's childless needs to be trauma-informed, because I think that's a really key part. So I'm really glad that this person had that experience. So they think, that was a really supportive thing. Compassion has been mentioned as a really key important thing. Somebody saying that they think somatic therapy is what they need at this stage, and can that be done virtually or is that hands-on? And I've had somatic therapy as a client, done via online counselling, and that was actually the kind of therapy called focusing, which is a body informed counselling practice, and I did have that done virtually. So yes, in my experience, everyone's different, but in my experience, somatic therapies such as focusing can be done online. Someone said, yes, we're not broken. We're living an alternative life that we didn't plan nor originally want. So I think that's a really important point. And there's lots of people reaching out to each other in the chat, which is great. Someone said that they felt more scarred by professionals than helped, and that's a really sad thing to read, actually, but it's heartening to hear of the help that's out there, and what a shame it comes at a financial cost that ices many people out. And I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge, is the financial cost of counselling, and the fact that it's not always available in our countries, as a in the UK from the National Health Service, and other countries from their health providers, that privately counselling can be very, very expensive. So if anybody's got any more comments about help or hindrancing to do with anything, we said in the introduction to our conversation that we could be talking about hairdressers, colleagues, counsellors, friends. There's a broad range of people that we encounter as childless people. So if anyone's got any other comments to add in the chat about what's helped or hindered them in general life, what's helped or hindered in counselling. And Steph's asked if she can keep the comment about the NHS on file, because it's something that she wants to look more deeply into, which I think is a really important thing, actually, is looking into the health providers in our country and providing education to them. And I'm really glad that someone said that we're both broken, but we're not broken in that we need fixing. We're emotionally broken. We don't need to be fixed. And in fact, we can't be fixed. Nobody can wave a magic wand and make us not childless. So trying to make suggestions about, like, one of the reasons I always say in conversations now really early on is I was turned down for adoption, because I'm really tired of people saying, have you thought about adoption? And I would say, yeah, I thought about it and I tried it. So back off. Because it's people would like, and it comes from their own need of wanting to help us and being uncomfortable with not being able to, but making suggestions can often be really unhelpful. And I've had counsellors make that suggestion to me as well. So yes, I think we're just now coming to the end of this webinar. We've got about 4 minutes left. So now is your chance. If there's anything else you'd like to share, please share it. A lot of posts about community, which is fantastic. And we've had a question as well, which is from one of our participants. Has anyone shared a story? And this can be answered by any of us, both the three of us giving this webinar and you guys in the chat. Has anyone shared a story and then years later felt proud to have shared it? Or have you felt hurt, disappointment, or another feeling? So please feel free, anybody, to answer that question. Has anyone shared a story and then years later felt proud to have shared it? Or have you felt hurt, disappointment, or another feeling? I guess my response to that would be, I now talk about being childless all the time, because I don't know who's going to need to hear it where I am. So I go to various clubs and I'm a joiner. I join things and I like being in clubs and things. And I'll often say it when I join a club. And 2 or 3 times people have come up to me and said, oh gosh, I'm childless as well. Can we get together and talk about it? So although I do sometimes have what a childless friend of mine calls vulnerability hangovers when I share my story, I do find that it pays off when someone comes up to me and says, I've never talked about it. I really like, can we go for a coffee? Can I talk about it with you? I shared my submission, which I think was published on Thursday as part of World Childless Week. I shared it on Facebook, and somebody commented and said, I've never talked about this. So yeah, although I have had vulnerability hangovers from sharing my story, I still hopefully feel that it pays off and that it invites other people to come and talk to me, and to share their own. But yes, anybody else want to reply to that question? Has anyone ever shared a story and then years later felt proud to have shared it, or hurt, disappointment, or another feeling?
Yeah, I think all three of us have done that, and I think Meriel, what you've just said as well is that vulnerability hangover. I think we're all very familiar with that, and trust me, there's no paracetamol you can take to deal with that hangover. It's that's a whole internal process, and but at the same time, for me, it's also I've said to myself a long time ago, and this was a journalist friend who I met in Paris. She said it to me as well. Said, own what you write, own what you put out there, and don't do it for the comments or don't do it for anything else, but just own what you write. Get your story out there, because you might never know if there's only one person who might change their outlook on their story, on their own story, or on their own experience based on what you've put out there. And if you only touch one person with your story, your job is done. Yeah. And even if you don't touch anybody, or even if you never find out that you may have touched someone with your story, or that you may have inspired them, said at least you've put it out there for yourself. You've claimed a little space in this whole universe for yourself to say, hey, my voice deserves to be heard. And whether it's actually acknowledged or not by others, that shouldn't really matter at the end of the day, because it's actually that you are acknowledging to yourself, hey, I deserve to be heard. And I think that's where the biggest power lies. And I just want to say one more thing, and then I will stop talking for this webinar, is that about we're broken but not broken. I truly believe, and it's one of my favorite quotes, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Because, you know, grief is often associated with darkness, but there's so much light also that has come in my life and in who I am as a person because of all that. So I just wanted to add that, and then this is over and out from me.
Yes, and I think it's over and out. Unfortunately, it's now 1 minute past 12 in the UK, so I'm going to just wrap up. Please keep posting in the chat. I would really like to thank everybody who's been here today. I've really felt a lovely sense that we're all in a room together. And I'm really grateful to everybody who's been here today to make us feel like we're part of one community. So big thanks to everybody who's participated. Please feel free to contact any of us with any other comments or questions. But really big thanks to Karin and Catherine-Emmanuelle, who, when I put something on Facebook going, does anybody want to do something about what helps us recover from childlessness? Both said, yeah, we'd really like to join in. And I was like, fantastic. I'd like to thank Steph. We wouldn't be here without you, Steph. Thank you so much from my heart for everything you do for our community, Steph. You are an absolute hero. And the whole of the World Childless Week team and ambassadors, thanks to all of you. The level of openness and beauty in the submissions this year, and they're not over yet, has been astonishing. I can't wait for next year. And don't forget that World Childless Week is here for you all year. The conversation and the support does not end. Thank you.